Shalom and welcome to Life Lessons. We are in segment 43 from the beginning of the Chumash. We began with Bereshit, with Genesis. We actually, with this one today, we're finishing the fourth book. As we know, there's 5 books. The book of Bereshit, the book of Genesis, the book of Shemot, Exodus, the book of Vayikra, this is Leviticus, and the book of Bamidbar, and this is Numbers. And in Numbers, that's what we are finishing today. There is 10 parashiyot, 10 sections. So from the beginning, this will be the 43rd from the beginning, and it will be the 10th of this fourth book of Bamidbar. So the name of the parasha, the name of the section is Masei, where Masei means journeys. Now the verse tells us, as a conclusion to what has happened till now, the situation finds our ancestors, the children of Israel, right at the steps of entering Israel. This is the 40th year of being in the desert, and they're about to enter the Holy Land. So now it gives some kind of a conclusion to what has happened till now. And the Torah goes and tells us all the stops that they have done from when they left Egypt till the final entry to Israel. So it begins that this is the journey of the children of Israel, that they left the land of Egypt. And it starts counting and telling us they stopped here, they stopped there, all the stops. And then it concludes by the end of the beginning here of this parasha, and they journeyed by the Jordan, Be'arvot Moav. They camped along the Jordan from Beis Yeshimon to Avel Shittim in the plains of Moab, and that is the final step. From there was what we're going to see later on in the book of Joshua, where they crossed into the Jordan. And jumping ahead, as we know the story by then, Moshe is not here. He passes away, and it's his student Joshua that becomes in charge, appointed by Moshe and God, and he's the one that leads, takes charge to lead them into the promised land, into Israel. But right now here, even though we have a whole other book that is coming, the 5th book of Deuteronomy, of Devarim. But right now here it somehow stops and gives us a summary about what has happened till now. And after telling us the journeys, he continues talking about the preparations. Talks about how the land should be divided and laws of inheritance. So all that is points how to get ready to go in. And the story of the daughters that were wondering what's with their portion in inheritance and how they received their portion of inheritance. And it concludes this whole entire book, that these are the commandments and the laws that God commanded the children of Israel through Moshe in the plains of Moab. That's where they are. They are in Moab, which today is Jordan. The plains of Moab, Al Yarden Yerichoi, by the Jordan near Jericho. That's where they are. Because when they're going to cross, that's going to be Jericho. Even today, when you cross the Jordan, you're right there. You're near Jericho. When we go and we count all these journeys, so this is interesting by itself. You'll see there's 42 journeys. 42 journeys. And there's a known saying from the Baal Shem Tov that he was the leader of the Hasidic movement. And he said that these 42 stops, every individual in their lives will encounter 42 stops. They may not know all the stops, and they may not know exactly when they had happened. But if we think a little bit about this, throughout our lives as we're here in this world, we have different kinds of journeys and different types of stops. some we were aware of them, and some were in the positive, and sometimes it could be even some of them, some stops in our life that maybe they were not so positive. The same as in these 42 journeys that the children of Israel had as they were traveling from Egypt till they came to the promised land. Also, you have some of them that not necessarily they were on the positive. So in other words, you have the general idea of the traveling they had done as the people of Israel, because as it's mentioned in the prophet Yechezkel, he describes that the coming out of Egypt was the birth of the Jewish people. If we talk about when, as Jewish people, we had become independent, this happened by the Exodus. By the Exodus, God took us out of Egypt, and then comes important stops in our journey. Splitting of the Red Sea, Mount Sinai, receiving the Torah, till we come finally to the promised land. So the same as in generally speaking, same thing is for each one of us as individuals, we also have journeys. And every stop in our life, we need to see it as advancing to the final goal. As mentioned many times, the life of the person or the way the world is created, it always has the beginning, the middle, and the end. When we mean the end, we look on it as the final goal, coming to its ultimate perfection, to the ultimate what we expected it should happen. So, as we know for ourselves, we kind of hope as we look on our lives that we are achieving, and when the day comes and we never know, this is interesting. If I quote what's written in the Ethics of Our Father, they advise us, always return, always repent a day before you pass on. And that's a very interesting statement, since for, I would say, 99.9 of the population don't have an idea when exactly that date is. So here's an interesting advice. Return, repent the day before you pass on. So that means every day you should be repenting, or as we would like to say, returning to God. But the idea of that is that each one of us on earth in this world has a mission. God gave us a mission, what we need to accomplish for ourselves, for our family, and the influence that we have on our friends and on the environment around us. For that, there is the beginning. And as we know, the beginnings are always hard, but it is the beginning. And then there is the middle, life as life goes on. The middle, many times, may have challenges. Not every day is a happy day. We hope it should be that way, but we're human beings, so we know that sometimes there is a bump on the road. And as long as we know there's a goal and have to get to that goal, so we don't look on that bump as a stop or as a reverse. And even if I have to reverse, it is because that will help me to move forward. Sometimes I have to back off of an idea, build myself up again, and continue doing it. As we see many times in politics that way too, that sometimes you have to back off of certain things in order to achieve greater goals. But we're talking about the life of the Jewish people, Am Yisrael, and then the lesson that we have for each one of us as individuals. So here becomes something very interesting. Many, many times we feel satisfied with what we have gained. We are happy with ourselves. We are happy with what we have accomplished, because for some of us, we have done nice things and wonderful things. Let's say we had a job, we were able to support a family, we were able to bring up a family, have children, grandchildren, and everything looks, as we would say, dandy. Everything looks fine and beautiful. And what happens at that point, sometimes we become complacent. We become satisfied with what the situation is. And it's like almost when we talk about the retirement and we're stuck and we're not really doing more things. Really, the idea is always to advance. We have different stages in our life, what we do. But even when we come to a stage where I think I'm satisfied, it's interesting. In Judaism, they always tell us never to be satisfied because there's always more to do, and they don't want us to get stuck in a certain situation. We always want to advance to the goal that we need to get going and what we need to be doing. That becomes very important in our parsha here, because what does it say over here? It says in plural, these are the journeys of the children of Israel as they left the land of Egypt. And he starts counting 42 journeys. Now, the one that I actually left from Egypt was basically one. You left from Egypt, and as it's written here, they left from Masei and they arrived in Sukkot. So really, it's one stop. The minute there was the Exodus, they left Egypt and finished. So you're done. Why does the verse say, and these are the journeys that they left Egypt? So in other words, it's telling us, till they arrived in Israel, it's still considered going out from Egypt. Means to say that it wasn't the final Exodus till they arrived in Israel. Now, in the simple meaning, you could say, because there was a goal here. The coming out of Egypt wasn't just for the sake of freedom itself, because then God, with all his power, could have left the Jews in Egypt as free people. What was the idea of taking them out of Egypt? Because there's going to be a journey here and bringing them Red Sea, Mount Horeb, Mount Sinai, and ultimately to Israel. And that means all these 42 stops. So as long I am still traveling, as long I'm still on the journey and did not arrive to my final destination, means I'm still leaving my where I started from. I'm still leaving Egypt. So let's say in our case here, if somebody that lives in Burlington and they're moving somewhere else, just to use an example, let's say North Carolina, and so even though the day that they left Burlington, so they could say we left Burlington, but you could almost say till they don't settle down and they actually move in where they are, where the new place is, it's still considered as they are living Burlington. Now, that means, as we would say, physically speaking or materialistically speaking, but obviously all this has a very deeper meaning spiritually speaking. So in the simple level, okay, you left Egypt. It doesn't consider it leaving completely till you arrive to your final destination. However, the language here is not just these are the stops that they have done on the way to Israel. The language is these are the journeys, Masei, these are the travelings. So in other words, even those stops that they stopped, what we call here, the 42 stops are not called in the Torah here as stops, but they are called here as journey. And if we look very carefully on the details of these journeys, we'll see that some of them is where not necessarily they behaved properly. Okay? And that's also considered journey. What that means to say is, as long as you're able to get up the next day and continue, learn your lesson from what has happened and move on forward, then it's considered a journey to go forward. And that is what's going on over here. And in a deeper meaning, this is what's teaching to each one of us. We realize as we are working on ourselves in the service of God to be better people, and with that to have influence on others, because this is what makes this world a better world, but begins with a base. I am here to serve my Creator. And from that, there's a purpose why God has placed us wherever we find ourselves in this world. There's a famous saying in one of the teachings of the Lubavitcher Rabbi that he quotes, that a person has to always view wherever they find themselves as divine providence. I did not arrive where I live just by accident. If I find myself in a certain place, that means this is where God had placed me to be there and to do something. And it's important to understand, generally speaking, when an individual starts thinking that God put him in this world for a mission, she, him, then all of a sudden, there is a reason in what am I doing. It's not I'm here just to waste my time and to become lazy, to not move forward. When we realize that we have a mission, then all of a sudden, life has a whole different meaning completely. And therefore, when we look from that point of view, yes, it is possible that some parts of the journey, stop 5, stop 6, or I would say journey 5, journey 7, may be a little complicated. In physically speaking, car broke down, went to the ATM, wasn't working right, have to figure things out. All kinds of things, of little challenges that could happen. I was hoping in my next stop I will be able to get on my computer because there's Wi-Fi there. My luck today, it's not working. And I have to figure out my next stop. These are little things, little kinds of challenges, but they are little times bothers us. We get annoyed by little things. Same thing is in our spiritual life. There could be certain things also. We get annoyed, we get stuck on certain situations. The idea is we have to know that as long as we are moving forward, then they are all called journey that will lead us to the promised land. Now, in that itself, there is what we would say challenges that we have to overcome. So these are situations where things are not going the way I want it to go. Things are hard. There's a challenge. The peace in the house is not so great. Things like this. So there's a real challenges. I'm not so happy the way my children turn out to be, and I'm working that it should be better. We all know for ourselves different things with real challenges that we have to deal with. So it helps to know that whatever it is, as long as I'm watching forward and doing what God wants, that it should help the situation. But here's something very interesting that they talk about in Hasidus, based on Kabbalah, that sometimes even in the positive, even when things look wonderful, we get comfortable and then somehow we don't move forward because we are happy in the situation that we find ourselves. And that's where it could become a problem too. In other words, even when things are wonderful, but things wonderful, and I'm not moving forward, it also becomes a complication. And that's important to understand, because the idea in spirituality is, and this we're talking about in the holiness in connection with God, how He wanted this world should be. Anything that we do has to be to develop and to go up higher. We go up the steps. We are climbing. And And as we know, when we climb up a mountain, you can't stop in the middle. So what you could do sometimes is step down a little bit to grab and then climb up to a higher. So there's sometimes a little bit going back for the case of going up. But you can't just stop in the middle. So in spirituality, that way too also. It's not good when a person feels just satisfied in what they have. They tell us it's important to be satisfied in other things. You should be satisfied in the amount of money that a person has, should be satisfied in other materialistic things. But in spirituality, a person shouldn't be satisfied. A person should always want more and more, because as much as we understood today, you could understand a lot more tomorrow. We are human beings, and the mind that God gave us is a continuous progress of understanding. And it's an amazing thing as we mature and as we get older, things that maybe yesterday I didn't understand, all of a sudden now, I'm not going to say we understand them 100%, but we understand it better. We learn from the challenges that we have, we learn how to move on, and we learn also how not to get stuck in a situation and feel, okay, that's the way it is. That helps to understand something very interesting here. We mentioned many times, because it says over here, when they came out, they left the land of Egypt, where in Hebrew, it's the word Mitzrayim. Mentioned many times that in Hebrew it has another meaning. Mitzrayim means boundaries and limitations. So what does it mean they came out of Egypt? According to Hasidus, they came out from boundaries and limitations, and all of a sudden, because God took them out of Egypt, you could look beyond being stuck in a box. You could come out of your boundaries and limitations. We all create to ourselves our own red lines, our own boundaries and limitations. That's as far as I'm willing to do. That's it. I'm not going to do more than that. But who decided that? We, according to our own mind and understanding. And then we realize the next day, you know what? I could do more than that. And what I taught yesterday, it's not that I was wrong. Yesterday, my capabilities didn't allow me to think more than this and this border. Now I could think more than that. So here comes something very interesting. I will answer the question that we were asking in the beginning. Didn't they come out of Egypt was one journey? And why do we say all the 42 journeys is considered coming out of Egypt? So before we said, because they didn't fully come out till they came to the final destination. Now we're saying even more than that, that every day we come out of Egypt. Because the idea of Egypt is to be in a certain limitation, boundaries and limitation. So whatever journey that I did yesterday and the day before, it was still a certain point. So therefore, every day, as much as I advanced the day before, okay, so that was great for that day, but you can't the next day be satisfied with that. We need to advance more and continue going. So it's interesting how we look on it. Let's look at it from a point of view where God blessed us with a mind, or an individual has a great mind, and he's studying, and he's understanding. So we see that in actuality. So a person learns something one day, and at that point you think, this is as much as I understood. I'm finished, and I'm happy with it. And I look at it and I says, okay, I don't have to revisit the issue again. I understood. But it's an amazing thing. The next day you'll go back and you'll look at it again. All of a sudden you'll see, wow, I could even understand even more. So in other words, the knowledge that I gained yesterday helped me now to gain even more knowledge. And now life is a continued experience and knowledge that we continue gaining all the time. And since we don't just gain it for ourselves, because there is us, there's the surrounding around us, may it be a spouse, children, environment. So all that helps to bring out the point that all these journeys lead ultimately to the promised land. And that is very interesting when we come in discuss over here, in the end here of the Chumash Bamidbar, because in here also he talks about the inheritance of the land. And I want to just bring out one point about the inheritance of the land. When we say the idea of inheritance, so the people that inherit are the same as the generation before. Let's say what parents inherit to their children is, if you go with that idea, what they received from their parents and what they received from the previous generation. So inheritance represents an idea of continuity. You would have some people that live in a house or have a property, and you will be talking to them. They'll say, well, this is my parents, my grandparents, my great-grandparents, till somebody decided to sell it. But the idea is the same thing when we talk about Judaism. We're talking about the promised land is an inheritance. God wanted to tell us that all these journeys, step by step, lead us to come to the promised land where over there our connection with God is very strong. All that came because of our journey, but deep down under all this is the inheritance that exists over there. So that should give us the strength as we finish this 10th parasha and 43 from the beginning, that there should be a real journey to the ultimate purpose, the coming of Mashiach in our times. Thank you.